Hi, this is Stan Dubin, and welcome to the Hiring Tips Podcast. Today's tip is going to focus on recruiting, and we have an exceptional young lady here, Kathleen Steffey, who has been in the recruiting world for 25 years, and she started her own recruiting business 18 years ago. It's called navigarecruiting.com. Anyway, she's going to help us find out, is a recruiter a good choice for you at any time? So hello, Kathleen.
Thank you, Stan, and thank you for saying young lady. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. So, well, why don't we just start off and explain to our listeners, what is a recruiter? What does a recruiter do?
Well, let's see. Simply said, a recruiter finds employees for companies that need help finding them and can't do it themselves.
Good. When should a company, now I realize we're dealing with companies, those who are listening to this podcast, we're dealing with companies of a variety of sizes. When should a company consider bringing in a recruiter?
Yeah. Well, when you've tried it on your own and it's not working, go ahead and try it. Use your referrals and see what you can do and network it like crazy to save the money. I'd say if you have HR infrastructure and a recruiting team established, you should make the call, to pull in a recruiter when they've got too many positions to work and they've reached their capacity in terms of execution, and you kind of see it with how long it's taking to actually fill a position and if jobs just are not being filled at all. So you pull in the big guns, if you will, when you look at your team and just see the lack of execution happening. And then, some might want to pull a recruiting firm in right away when it's a really detailed search and it's too complex for the owner or executives to handle on their own, or their HR/recruiting team to handle on their own. The skill sets of the team, the time that's either available or unavailable of the team, and you've got to make that call because it's an important hire to get done. I would say those are the key kind of points you got to think about.
Right. And when I look at a good number of my own clients, one of the challenges that a number of them are running into today is getting that skilled position filled, because they're, and this is their perspective, that there's the appearance of a scarcity of that talent available.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give our listeners with that kind of a situation?
So pretty much, how do you go get them? How do you go get that hard to fill person?
Yeah. Find and get. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tricky because the types of things you have to do to go, hunt and kill, if you will. Nobody has the time if you're not a recruiter. Even human resources professionals who are on their A game, they don't have the time to be recruiting in a really effective manner to get the job done. And my background is corporate HR recruiting and Naviga. So owning Naviga for 18 years. So I've got the perspective on the HR side, where all my internal customers were VPs of marketing, CEOs, presidents, all that stuff. So it's tricky because you've got to have a robust system in place to actually recruit. So, in order to go wide and deep and actually find these really tough to fill positions and get these candidates, you've got to have the time, resources, and tools to do it. Otherwise, you're just waiting for, these people to just react to you through, advertisements or referrals. And that can only go so far. It really can. So you've got to do really, really good work as it relates to researching where to find these candidates and do development of the pipeline, from this research. We call it sourcing. That's how you source. You go out and find a bunch of candidates and you're really strategic about it and real, deliberate about it. and intentional. It's, you know exactly who you're looking for, you know the titles, the industries, and then you go after them in a really robust process. And then you've got to have an amazing, evaluation process as well, where somebody is feeling confident enough in the business to pull a candidate out, of the process if they're not doing the right thing, if they don't meet the standards you need, in order to do comparisons and not settle on one person that just, arrives. And then they have to be mindful of, displaying a top employer brand experience. Okay. So there's a lot of different things that executive search firms do in their process to make it sexy and pull candidates in, based on the amount of information they're sharing on the front end, on the phone, and, via PDF or email, and then, gaining their interest through this stuff, and then going through the process in a really, really, top tier employer brand way, if you will, to get them hooked.
Right. Okay, that's good. This seems like there's a nice, healthy element of detective work going on there.
Oh, big time. Big time. That's the majority of our work. Detecting and finding and capturing, a really good recruiting firm and recruiting process. You've got to have the infrastructure to be doing that. It's huge. There's so many different ways to get them. And it's a process.
Okay, that's very good to know. If you were to do some recruiting, or looking to acquire talent for one or more of our listeners, once you've gone through the process, from what you've told me earlier, you essentially come up with 3 or 4 ideally qualified candidates that are going to be darn close to what they need.
Yes, absolutely. And we do a deep dive intake call. We call it a calibration call with the hiring manager before we start the search. And this is at least an hour long. And we go through a series of questions that really help us put the puzzle pieces together for this particular position, about the requirements of the role, the hiring manager, what they're like, what is their leadership skills like, how will you be measuring them after 6 months to a year? How will you know that you've made the right hire? What things will you be looking for in this person to know that you've made the right hire? So that call in itself is just like a roadmap for quality, So by the time we're submitting 4 people to the employer, we should not be making mistakes, on that background. That background should be, now these guys or gals are in the face of our customer, and they need to now just be, making cultural fits, personality fits. Can I get along with this person? Can I lead this person? Can I coach this person? And things of that nature. So that top 4 is key.
Excellent. Now, obviously, once you locate some of the candidates that you're putting through the mill on your end to see if they're going to end up being, one of the 3 or 4 that you're going to pass over to the client, you're asking them a number of questions. And this is, very similar, on a very clear parallel to the HR or the owner of a smaller company sitting down and asking a candidate various questions to determine, are they a good fit? Are they the right person to hire? Give us an idea. How about 3 questions that you would ask a candidate in a hiring interview?
Okay. There are, just to take a step back, there are pre-qualifying questions that are critical in deciding if we're going to move somebody on or not. Okay. Even before we get to these, top questions during an interview. And the pre-qualifying questions are: were you looking when we tapped you on your shoulder, not anyone's shoulder, your shoulder? And the reason we ask that is because we want to know our odds of this person going through our process and accepting an offer. Were they looking? Is anything going on that's making you, internally want to talk to a recruiter? I mean, because most people, they're not going to talk to a recruiter if they're happy. That's the bottom line. Why are you looking to leave the position? We want to hear what's going on internally. Are they a complainer? Are they somebody who executes? Or are they somebody who doesn't execute and they're, just complaining about the lack of progress or whatever that might be? So that's key. And then what are you looking to do next in your career? So what type of position and scope do you want? And then another thing is, what are your compensation requirements? Seems pretty basic, but we just don't mess around. We need to know, where have you been? And in a lot of states, we can't ask now, but we do ask, what are your compensation requirements? What do you need? And if they need way too much money, we kind of stop the conversation if it's not close enough. So there's a lot of time that we gain by asking these key qualifying questions. Does that make sense? Just even on the pre-qual questions?
It does, but I want to do a little bit of follow up on two of them.
Uh-huh.
In terms of, I have heard this about there being regulations about asking about compensation. From your perspective, does that apply to the candidate in the state that he is in, or does that apply to where the client's state is?
Yeah, great question. It's the state they are in.
Okay. And then the other question is, you mentioned in the second pre-qualifying question, do they execute? What did you mean by execute?
One of the questions I think you're talking about is when I said, why are you looking to leave? So if you hear somebody say, we play sales and marketing people, okay? So if you hear a sales guy after the first year talking about, how upset they are in not making plan after a year, or two, it's like, it's telling, are you somebody who can get things done or are you not? And if somebody's looking to leave after 2 years of being in a sales position because they're not having success, I mean, it's usually an indicator it's on that person. They need to make things happen and they're a complainer. So,
okay. So now, did you imply that you might have you want to go over a few questions that are beyond the pre-qualifiers?
I did imply, yes. So during the interview, here are some cool questions that we ask that can get us places. So one is, if your boss was a fly on the wall and I was able to speak to them candidly, what do you think they'd say about you? Okay. What do you think they'd say? And it's different from calling or saying to them, who can you provide as a reference? And then calling that reference. Usually when you ask it like that, what would they say candidly about you? Some truths come out, and it's not always negative, but just maybe some weaknesses that aren't huge that would prevent them from getting the job. But you can get a really good, authentic response from that. Another thing is, discuss the impact that you've had in the past 3 years. So say 2019, 2018, 2017. Let's talk about what kind of impact you've had on the business. Tell us exactly what kind of impacts you've had on the business. I want to know impacts. I don't want to know duties. I don't want to know responsibilities. Those will come out in time, but I want to know how you've impacted this business. And it's important. And then, so I told you we send a lot of information up front to candidates, or maybe I didn't, but we do. We send a search engagement profile, which is like a sexier version of a job description. And then we also send an insights document that basically captures all this information that we gain on that intake call from the hiring manager. So we say, after reviewing these things, where do you see yourself impacting this particular role and business the most? Because number one, I want to make sure they're invested and they've read things and they can go deep and they understand what's going on in this business and not just taking it lightly. And then I want to know, where do they see themselves impacting the business after learning about their needs and what kind of holes they have and things of that nature. I want to know that they're a thinker and an executor, and you can get some places by asking those things.
So good questions. Now, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. We've gone a little over what I was thinking we would do, but there's other things that I can go over with you. Would you be open to a second show?
Absolutely. I'd love it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, good. If you'd like to reach Kathleen, her website is navigarecruiting.com. That's Naviga, Naviga, recruiting.com. In the show notes will be 3 links. That link will be there. A link that's an About Us page for her company, Naviga. Thank you for talking with us today. We'll end the show right here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. In addition to our podcast, we have a service that will help you hire honest, trustworthy, and dependable staff. Watch our 3-minute video at thetestingservice.com. Once again, that's thetestingservice.com.